merge the images here.
No.
Still going.
All right.
Demo's going to be fun.
Demo is going to be fun. All right. Let's get down to business. I'm going to exaggerate that now. Hi, everybody, and welcome. Happy Friday. We have another kind of community sync and demo for today. I think our content for today is relatively light on our side for demos, so we'll do a couple of demos on what the team has worked on this week. We have a particularly nasty defect that Andy's been working on. We've got some of the quantity selector feature work that Stephen alongside of Brendan Falkowski has been working on from the community. And then we'll kind of open up to any questions, any thoughts, any feedback from the community, everybody on the line. So yeah, that's about the plan for today. Andy, you want to get started?
You want to start with this? All right. I don't have anything to show, but I can talk you through it.
You can show the symptom.
So
I think everyone sees the symptom.
Yeah. Yeah, so if you're using our image component, we noticed at the beginning of this week on our demo site, and we had some reports from people using it, community folks using it as far back as 4.0, that some images weren't showing up. So we didn't push any changes this week, but we noticed that Chromium Blink released version 80 at the beginning of this week, so kind of right from the beginning we had an inkling that was related. So we started to investigate. These images are loaded, lazy loaded, so they're using the loading equals lazy attribute. It's relatively new. It's been around 6 months or so, I guess. And the image component is applying styling of display none to images that haven't loaded yet. And then once they have loaded via the onload attribute, then we display them. So we determined that the onload callback was never firing, and that's odd because that's been around forever, tried and true. And that was because the browser was never requesting the images in the first place, as of this week. So let's see. Yeah, so we realized that was because of the display none, and combined with the fact that the images are lazy loaded. So Chromium browsers can use whatever heuristic they want. This is not spec'd as to when the browser should request these images, the lazy loaded images, I mean. So they can use whatever heuristic they want, and so we think that they are now taking CSS and specifically display none into account if they should fire off a request for these images. So it should also be noted that only some of the images weren't working. Most notably, the logo wasn't showing up. So that was kind of a big deal. But then we also saw some product images that weren't showing up, things like that. So that's weird. I wonder why that is. So we dug into that. And there's actually also a placeholder request that the browser sends out if the image dimensions aren't set. If you don't set a height and width, it sends out this placeholder request. And it fetches the first 2 kilobytes of the image, downloads that in an attempt to figure out the height and width and how much space on the page this image is going to take, how to lay it out so there's no jank and jumping once the image actually loads. So we found out that the images that weren't working did have their height and width explicitly set. So this other placeholder request was never taking place, which meant that the onload was never firing, which meant that we never showed the images. So that caused the bug to happen sometimes and not other times. Anyway, it was a whole mess. My hair's been on fire all week trying to figure this thing out because it really has nothing to do with us. Or at least we didn't do anything to trigger it. But anyway, the fix that's up right now in PR form is moving away from display none to visibility hidden. And that was we determined the smallest because this is going to have to be a hotfix or patch or however we're going to release this to y'all. But in the meantime, if you want to do it before we release it, just change the image from when it's not loaded to from display none to visibility hidden. we've still got some problems. We're getting, anyway, it's not 100%. The PR is not merged yet because it's still in QA. We're still running into some issues. But yeah, that was just a roller coaster whirlwind of my week this week. And it's not done yet, so yeah, I'll keep you posted. But yeah, that was exciting.
Well, we all thank you for jumping on this particular issue. Yeah, so the PR is 2164. So if you're curious about what's going on with this kind of image issue, or you think even more importantly you can contribute to the effort or help Andy out as he's diving into it,
Awesome.
feel free to go into the PR at 2164 and check it out.
Cool.
All right. So any questions for Andy?
I should mention also that there's lots of good ideas about how to make the image component better, and we have backlogged those issues. But for this specific PR, it's just trying to like I said, kind of the smallest fix possible, hot fix type of action. So not trying to refactor the whole thing, even though that probably is coming.
All right, great. So next we have Steven, the quantity selector.
All right, so I was working on this over the last couple of weeks, along with Brendan Falkowski, who started the PR. Got this to a good state, and then I've been trying to work on like hooking it up to the back end so that when you update the quantity, the totals and everything changes. First, you can notice what Andy was talking about on here. The images aren't loading, and that's because of that display none issue. So we can actually just like, I'm not going to get into it, but we know why that's happening. And so once we get that fixed out, they'll start showing up again, and this won't look like a wireframe. So yeah, the quantity select, or sorry, the update quantity component here looks pretty simple, but it's a little bit involved. That said, this is a text input, and you can set this to whatever quantity you want. There's a blur right now. There's a blur effect, so when you tab out, you might have seen it on the screen. I don't know. It's a little bit. It's not too much contrast there, but it kind of like grays out and disables everything for a second, and then it updates, and it's really really quick. You see the price has changed over here. You could also use the toggle button, see it grayed out again to change the quantity. We have it on a debounce so that when you spam this button, it doesn't submit a bunch of requests, but it does. It waits just like a second or 500 milliseconds after the last press to actually send that call. Additionally, right now, the current user experiences to when the user enters 0 and leaves, it's actually the same as removing a thing. So whether that's jarring or not, this is the design that we came up with to use. But you can't actually go to 0 by clicking the negative button. So really the only way to remove the item is either to click the kebab and then click remove, or to manually set this to 0 and tap away. There's also some validation stuff that I think we've run into. So this is a text input, but we have to mask it because technically if you make it a number input, the letter E is a valid number as an exponent, at least in Chrome. So if this was a number type input field, and then you put like 1E2, I think it's like, or 2E2, and it'd be like 2 squared.
Does that have an impact on like mobile? Like if you text in, will you get like the full keyboard and not the number input?
Yeah, that's the primary use of the number.
Oh, interesting.
If it pulls up.
Yeah.
That's actually a really interesting point. So maybe given that, if we're trying to be mobile first, it would be better to make this number input and then do some sort of masking that prevents E from being input. Right now, if you put, you can put numbers, you can't put anything else in Chrome. I'm like pressing random buttons, you guys can't tell, but, and if you try, I'm pressing like negative, that's also not working. So right now it's just masking that input so that on desktop I can only input numbers. But yeah, I haven't actually tried this on mobile, so Thanks, Tommy.
Deb's got you covered, don't worry.
He's already working on it right now. He's got his phone out.
Tommy, that's a really good catch, man.
That actually, yeah, it actually is a totally valid point. I hadn't even thought about what pops up on a mobile form whenever you're entering something. So, anyways, a little more work probably to do on this. It's not quite merged yet, so you'll just see the basic, like it's a little like -1 plus on the current develop branch. But soon this will get merged, and that'll just be one step closer to cart completion.
One step closer.
Yeah.
Awesome. Any questions for Steven?
I can also show the filter stuff. I mean,
Sure.
It's not done, but I'm just.
Oh, got a question in chat.
Oh yeah. What's up?
Zetlin.
Never mind.
Yeah.
Ignore it.
Is it a question for me?
Are you sure E is evaluating as an exponent and not as Euler's number E? Approximately 2.7718.
Oh, you know what? I don't know, Zetlin.
Is it?
That's a good question.
Do we
Get on that, man.
Is it E? Like, well, the browser knows what the number is.
You know, I mean, honestly, maybe we don't care because if the use case is mostly that people are going to be entering numbers through the phone, then they're not going to be pressing E. Or if they're on desktop and they happen to press E, like, it'll. I don't actually know what happens.
Yeah.
Do you want to prevent somebody from buying an exponential amount of your stuff?
Well, again, I don't know. I don't even know if it's an exponent. I just said what I thought it was. Zatlin's going to correct me and make me feel dumb. So.
No, I didn't actually know. But does this number input have a step attribute?
Yeah. So that's another interesting point, Zetlin. So on Chrome, this is a text input now, but when it was a number type input, there was actually a stepper that would show up here that was totally like native. It was a browser thing. So we have like our step buttons, and there's like this little thing over here that you might accidentally click on. So I actually feel like making it just a text input is a better experience, but
Maybe you can still tell it to like pop the number board on mobile.
I don't know. I'm
That native control is stylable, I believe. I think it's a pseudo element. You know, you'd want to check on support of that. But I think, like Tommy said, if you use the input type number, it gives you that advantage of the correct keyboard. Some people even use input type tel for telephone number, which is like you get a numpad.
Yeah.
But like you can style the thing, I believe.
Yeah, it would be like when I picked this up, most of it was already pre-styled and pre-written. So these are actually separate components. These plus and minus buttons. So if it was something like as easy as making this a number and then applying the CSS to make it those like increment and decrements move over to the side and be buttons, then sure I could give that a shot. I don't know how easy that's going to be. This is kind of dictated by grid. There'd definitely be some CSS tinkering there.
Yeah,
so,
you and I can talk about that after.
Yeah, it's not merged, and there's been some, it's close, but it's not merged, so it's still in progress. It's something I can totally work on. Yeah. Any other questions? Any other guesses as to what E is? Right. Another thing I've been working on, so this is...
Hey guys, I have one question on that selector. Can you guys hear me? This is Manish.
Yep.
So some of the Magento clients, this is the configuration from the backend where we can enable decimal points for selling. Let's say some of our shoppers, vendors, they sell cloth, so they sell it in decimal points. So if we are not allowing float here, then it will break that functionality.
Good point. So you're saying that as a backend configuration, it's possible to set a non-whole number?
Yes. So this is the backend configuration where we can define whether decimals are allowed or not for the quantity.
That's not even something that I had taken into consideration when I picked this up. But we can talk about it afterwards, or the PR's up. It's PWA 119. So if you have feedback, I definitely would appreciate, or it's PR 2115. So if you have feedback and want to talk about it in here, that'd be great. We can also open up follow-up issues to sort of follow on to expand the use cases, because as it is, it's already gone through review in its current form. So if we change up the functionality too much, it's going to be kind of resetting that clock. But that's a valid point. We should talk about it offline.
Is that on like the B2B radar? That's usually more like B2B.
I mentioned it is, yeah. We haven't accounted for B2B to date. So, I mean, in the end, we will definitely explore that. And if we follow up in an additional ticket, however we address it, like that's definitely something we need to follow up on. So, good call out, Manish.
Yeah. I was just going off the spec, I think.
Yep.
All right. No more questions? Oh, done with the filters. So this is in progress and it may break. Just a little preface there. But everyone's probably familiar with the filter button that you see when you're on the category page or the search page right now. This pops out, and this was populated by some GraphQL response data that told us what was filterable. In 2.3.4, that has changed from this filters object response to what's called aggregations now. And there's still some back and forth as to what constitutes a valid thing to filter on, because these are customizable dynamic attributes. So, not all your products will have a style, not all your products will have a material or a color. So these attributes have to come back into schema. But basically, doing sort of an intersection between what this product attribute filter input allows. So you see it's got fashion, color, material, fashion, style, price, all this stuff, and what comes back from aggregations, which are just a bunch of codes and labels and what options are possible. We end up with this view. So it's that intersection of the aggregations and the possible filters that results in this filter modal selections. So you can see I can apply here, and now we're actually applying those filters to the top. Probably won't look accurate because the data is a little bit crazy, and some of these things don't look like they're images, I guess, so the colors may be off. But we are sending these filters now to the server. GraphQL is responding with new products, and we're displaying those products. So that PR is also currently in progress. It is PR 2166. If you have any thoughts or opinions on that, I definitely would like to hear it. I've been running into some weirdness with how historically Luma has done things and how how people intend filters to be used. For example, price and category filtering on a category page is a little bit odd. So I'm still wrestling with those right now. But the cool thing is, after this PR is merged, hopefully we'll have a filter view that actually functions, and instead of just being a UI. I know that's been something that people are asking for. Any questions?
Quick question. So will you pick up the filters response as well, along with aggregations, or the new version only supports the aggregation response and GraphQL?
Yeah. So if you look at the products query, let me see. The products query, expand. Okay, it won't expand. So you see here, the filters response. The old thing that we were doing to see what was filterable for a given page was we were requesting this filters object. Apparently that is deprecated, and they were recommending we use aggregations instead. And so aggregations are just like, for the current set of data that you're getting back, what further filters can you apply to that information to further filter down? So that's this list of that's what we get when we're querying for products. But when you're actually requesting, so this is the response right here, but when you're requesting information, you have to pass a filter. And so these are predefined in the schema So I guess that's what I was saying, where we have to do like an intersection of what is possible input and what the API is telling us are options that we can send, if that makes sense. A little bit. Like we couldn't just display based on this input because we don't know what possible options there are, right? Like if we just say, okay, fashion material is an input, how do we know in the filter modal what to display? So that's what aggregations tells us. It says, for fashion material, these are the possible options that you can select. That was previously given to us by filters, but now that's deprecated. I don't actually know if I answered a question.
I'm asking this because we already started to build on top of the filters response.
You're using this filters response?
Yeah, and I'm just wondering how much effort it will be to switch to aggregations.
Oh, it was actually not a lot of work to switch. In this PR, if you look at it, you'll see some places where I just went through and I mapped what the filters response had and then what aggregations gives, and they're pretty much, there's like some place it was like value and now it's like value ID or something. Someplace it might have been name, but it was actually label in the response. So I just did some changing of where we deconstruct that data, and it all works just fine. So I would recommend taking a look at the PR to kind of see where I'm doing that, where I'm using the word aggregations now, and you'll see what I'm doing to make that switch. But it was pretty minor, that specific part, moving from filters to aggregations.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah, we feel your pain though. We built the modal off of filters and now it's aggregations.
Yeah, so we're in active conversation. I think it's important to call it too. We're in active conversation working with the GraphQL team to work through some of the issues here, make some requests, and so we'll of course keep everyone up to date with how that's going. I think as we kind of either make additional requests or maybe make bug items here, we'll comment on the PR, the issue about it. So definitely active work in progress. Active work in progress. Yeah. Active.
Yeah. All right. No more questions? I'm gonna unplug.
Awesome. So I think that's it that we have on our side for demos. So I guess I will open up to the floor. So normally Jordan is here to talk about Community Corner. He had a mandatory company meeting because he has a day job, so he could not make today's meeting. But he did want to call out that for SEOSnap, which obviously he demoed for the larger group during our SSR meeting, and he's talked about a couple times in our community sync meetings, the open source solution for SSR that he presented. He did update some of the documentation in the README for SEOSnap. So if you were asking questions about better documentation, it is there now. And he asked me to cover that in particular for him today. So I don't have a demo for it, obviously, but there you go. You can ask Jordan about it. So we don't have anything, I think, generally for Community Corner today. We'll follow up again next week. So this is kind of open floor for any questions, comments. Jimmy, James, if you guys have anything on the line, feel free to jump in here.
No, thanks. I'm good. There's a lot of stuff in the pipeline, and I'm excited to share it when it's ready, but not before, because those demos are frustrating.
Yeah, we're mostly just trying to get all the cart work wrapped up and merged in so that we can actually start looking at the next major chunk of work and the next major epic here. We'll check out.
That is correct. Anyone else? Any other questions on the line? Great. Well, that's it for today then. We'll wrap it up a little bit short today, and then Ravant has some.
We got the Magento U folks in Orlando. They're all dialed into the community.
Yeah, so that's a quick update. We do have some folks down in Orlando that have been working over the last week. You should know that You guys have been, there you go.
Hey,
Hey guys. So we have a team down there that's been helping create course content for Magento U for a PWA Studio specific course. Those folks have been working pretty diligently over the last week to get that done. So I expect we'll have an update next week. That's more than just what the ceiling looked like in Orlando.
Yeah, it's great to be there. Oh,
Pull it down a little more.
There
There.
we go.
Hey.
All right.
There's a cock.
So you can hear
So
us?
we can hear you now. Yeah.
All right, so here's the awesome thing. This is Peter Manager, and I want to thank everybody here who did a tremendous job. The course has been developed. Okay.
Course is developed.
It is basically a 3-day course. It's been developed. It's going to be taught first as a special instructor-led class, and then will be on request, and then after that will be an on-demand class. The other thing is that we also created the half-day session for Imagine, okay, on PWA, and we have 2 folks here, 2 partners who are going to deliver it. So that's
awesome.
all set. So I got to tell you that the effort that they did was just tremendous. Okay, and so it's too bad they're in the room so they heard me say this. Okay, but they just did an absolute fantastic job. And, thank you for, providing Ravent, all right, and James, really, truly just great players in this. And of course, you can see the rest are all partners, right? So partners carried the day. And so anyway, just again, thank you. Thank everybody. And that's it. And thumbs up. Everybody, thumbs
Round
up.
of applause.
Awesome.
Round of applause for you guys over there in Orlando. Yeah, there we go.
Look forward to that session at Imagine then.
Definitely.
Great. Nice work, everybody.
All right. Well, hey, great update from Orlando, and I think that wraps the meeting. So onwards and upwards. Recording has ended. Don't forget to smash like and subscribe. Honk if you like it.
You got to practice that closing.
This gets weirder every time. This gets weirder and weirder.
It's getting worse too. I feel like it's getting worse. But everyone have a great weekend, and we'll see you later.
Happy
We'll see you next
Valentine's
week.
Day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah, love you. Bye.
Can't love you.
That's the best one for sure.
you're supposed to end the recording right